The views on a Breath of Fresh Air podcast reflects the parties involved, and we encourage you all to use it as a conversational tool that will lead to personal studies of your own.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Welcome to a Breath of Fresh Air podcast. Here with your hosts, Earl Roberts and Nakhaz Gay. As a young person, Christianity can be so foggy, like smoke in the mirrors and so unclear. But we're here to bring you a breath of fresh air.
Samuel, you said you would be here by now. Okay, he told me to wait a week. He said he would be here after 7 days in Gilgal. That's what we agreed upon. Man, you gotta come quick, Samuel. We gotta go to war. There's a war. The war is about to start. We have become obnoxious to the Philistines. They want to kill all of us. My men are running wild. Listen to them. Okay, I'll relax. But just calm down. But Samuel, you better be here. You better be here. The sun is about to set. It's almost day 8. It's almost day 8. The sun is about to set. I'm not waiting on Samuel anymore. Go. Send somebody out there and see if he's on the path. No? He's not? I'm not waiting on Samuel anymore. As a matter of fact, I'll do this myself. I don't need Samuel. I, King Saul, will perform the sacrifices myself. Erect an altar and bring me the animals for sacrifice. A burnt offering to you, Lord. Samuel, it's about time you showed up. But don't worry, I have everything under control.
Saul, what have you done?
When I saw that the men were scattering and that you did not come at the set time and that the Philistines were assembling at Michmash, I thought, now the Philistines will come against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the Lord's favor. So I felt compelled to do the burnt offering myself.
You have done a foolish thing. You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. If you had, He would have established your kingdom over Israel for all time. But now your kingdom will not endure to the end. The Lord has sought out a man after His own heart and appointed him ruler over His people. Because you have not kept the Lord's command. King Saul and the Israelites are at war again. No surprise. In this episode, we'll be focusing on 1 Samuel chapter 13. King Saul has some very important decisions to make, and we will be discussing his actions in this chapter. As always, be blessed and enjoy. All right, welcome back to another episode of A Breath of Fresh Air. We thank everyone for tuning in. Hopefully you guys had a great week, despite if it was long or not. Thank God for Sabbath rest. We really appreciate everyone who tunes in every week and listen. This week we are continuing the story of the Israelites. I mean, we're going to be doing that for a while, so I probably have to come up with something else to say, but we're going to be talking about Saul specifically. But before we get into all of that, we thought this was going to be based on something that me and Nakhaz were talking about before the pod. And it really just goes into knowing what you believe and why you believe it, and the importance of being steadfast in your resolutions. So, like, you say you call yourself a Christian. For those of you who listen to this podcast who are Christian, why are you a Christian? And do you know why you're a Christian? Do you know what you believe? And like, what is the characteristics of a Christian? What do Christians believe? What are stuff we should all agree on, regardless of denomination? Like, what are your beliefs and why are they so important? Because it's one thing to just call yourself a Christian and be cute about it. But if you're having a conversation with someone who doesn't believe in Christ, like, what are you going to tell them a Christian is? And when they start to push back at you, do you know, like Nakhaz says, like, do you know what you believe, why you believe it, and where it's found? It's like, can you back it up? And to me, like, that's super, 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 super important in the day we live in, because there's so much deception out here. And realize I didn't say just lies, like flat out deception. The lies coming to you presented as truth. And in today, more so than ever, and I know a lot of different generations probably claim this, but I really do feel like in today where information is so readily and easily distributed and false narratives can be so readily accessed, that it is definitely important for everybody to know what you believe, why you believe it, and where it's found. I know you probably got a whole bag on this.
No, I can get deep into a bag, but bro, it's just important to read the Bible, bro. I feel like a lot of, I mean, it's don't get me wrong, bro. It's a lot of nerdy, very theological debates that people can have, especially people who know the Bible. But in general, I feel like a lot of the disconnect with a lot of denominations is just off the fact that people don't read the Bible. I was one of them. I prided myself on knowing the Bible. I had attempted to read the Bible. I listened to the Bible. I never actively listened for it. I did it just because I felt the need to. But it wasn't until like this podcast, honestly, that I actually really started retaining information about the Bible. And it really taught me a lot. Like some people who I thought of as the hero in certain stories, I realized could be seen as the villain. You know what I'm saying? But overall, it helped me to challenge why I do certain things. Like it helped me to challenge what I believe. And so I encourage everybody else to read the Bible. If you call yourself a Christian, right? If you consider yourself a Christian, understand what's in this book. Understand the principles that's outlined in this book, and do it as if you do not belong to any denomination. And I'm saying this to Seventh-day Adventists. I'm saying this to Methodist, Baptist, Catholic, anybody. When you read the Bible, forget every person, bro. Forget every sermon you ever hear, unless you already read it and you struggle to understand and you need people to help you break it down. I recommend going about this just you and God, just you and the Holy Spirit, because a lot of times that can kind of challenge and break down all of the traditions that a lot of people hold on to. Just plain and simple. It's certain things where people tell me, I know that you actually don't read or you haven't read a lot in the Bible, and I just feel like we'd be more unified as a church if everybody was to be more informed on this. Bro, my bad. I say I wasn't getting into a bag, right? But obviously it's something I'm passionate about. But a lot of people believe that Christianity is really about acknowledging that Christ is God. And I disagree. You understand? Like, I feel like you have to have faith in God. That's salvation. You understand what I'm saying? However, if you are acting like the devil, but you acknowledge that Christ is God, I don't see how that makes you a Christian, especially because we have people in the Bible who were Israelites, you understand what I'm saying, who were Christians, but they was Ananias and Sapphira, they were Christians, you understand what I'm saying? They were Christians, they tried to scheme the church, they end up getting put to death, not put to death, but they end up getting struck down by God, just murdered, like not murdered, but anyway, God, they're deceased because of their deceiving acts in church. But they were Christians, they recognized God and they just were being sacrilegious and stuff like that. So the point I'm making is like we should be trying to get more like God. We should be trying not to make the mistakes that the people of the Bible have made, right? How will we do that? How will we learn about God? How will we understand what God expects of us? Except that we read the Bible. And I feel like once you read the Bible, you will understand the responsibility that we have as Christians to represent God. However, when you don't read the Bible, you could subscribe to the notion that Oh, I just have to acknowledge that Christ is King. I just have to. I know that Jesus is God. I know that I pray. You understand, and that makes me a Christian. But I don't think so, because like at the end of the day, whether you acknowledge Jesus is God or not, Jesus is God, bro. Like whether you believe my name is Nakhaz, my name is Nakhaz. Like it doesn't matter what you think or what you believe. You understand what I'm saying? Like this, the truth is the truth. It's a constant. You know what I'm saying? The devil knows that Jesus is God. He knows that firsthand, but he's not a Christian.
That's wild.
You understand what I'm saying? And so, like, truthfully, I feel like it is the greatest asset for all Christians to study the book, to study the good book, to understand it, and just to learn. It's a fun book. It's a little hard to read. I'll be very honest about that, but the stories are very entertaining. I like it, and it's good for your soul.
Man, it's one thing I just want to like hop on. We'll see how long this goes, but again, like don't just take people's word for it. Even if we say something, like again, we have the thing at the beginning, reviews of Breath of Fresh Air reflects the parties involved with me. Encourage you to use it as a conversational tool to further studies of your own. The reason why that's so important, that's just that relation just now for Breath of Fresh Air. If you're listening to a sermon by a pastor or religious leader, and they quote scripture, it is still your job. Shouldn't say job, but it should still behoove you to go and read some of these passages that they're quoting to make sure they're not out of context, to make sure to get the further story around the verse. Because sometimes in the sermon, they pull it from different verses, and sometimes use these one-liners and different type of stuff. And you have to go back and read the full context, because a pastor could say something to you that may be misleading. And I ain't trying to say some pastors here misleading people, even though some are, but still, it's still your job to go and learn the Bible for yourself and read it, even though it might be a harder read for some. That's why I say, okay, there's a whole debate about the different translations and versions. Where some of these things are valid? Don't get me wrong. But if you struggle reading the King James, personally, I say, okay, leave King James as a tertiary level book. And I do think you should go back and read it. But if you got to start off with the NIV, even though the NIV got some stuff going on with it, it's on the people, the ESV, but my thing is start reading and get a basic understanding, because God could use this book to start opening your eyes to certain things. Now, when you don't get comfortable reading these things, you already get a familiarity of the story. You can go back to the King James, can read it and, fight through it. But then at that point, you already know some of these things. You actually can see the original context of some of these stories and see if verses or passages are missing. You can compare and contrast, but that's in your personal size to grow deeper. My whole point is, don't use the hard reading as an excuse not to read it for yourself, because that's how the devil can leave you in darkness. Because if you just start just taking people's word for it, you're not developing a relationship with God for yourself. And God wants a personal relationship with you, not just a personal relationship with your pastor in the middle. He wants for you to get to know him. The days of what we're reading about in the Bible right now with the priest intercessing before the people before God, those days are gone. You yourself can go petition before God directly. So that means you yourself have a direct personal relationship with God, and that's what God wants. Sorry, I see you.
No. I had another thought, but I choose to keep that for another time.
All right. But yeah, so I guess that's the thought. Know what you believe, why you believe it, where it's found. And then also don't be afraid to develop that personal relationship with God, because I think some people might find it as an extra burden. But to me, it should provide you some type of liberty, because think about it. We have a God that wants to he wants us to get to know him, because he already knows us. And that's the weird part about he already knows us, but he wants us to get to know him. He wants to have that relationship with us. He wants to be a refuge in the time of in the time of trouble, in the time of storm. He wants to be a rock, a foundation. He wants to be these things, but he can't be it if you don't have a relationship with him. So just food for thought. So where are we this week? We are in 1 Samuel, starting from 1 Samuel 13. And if you've been following along, you kind of guys know where we're at in the story. But for the off chance that there is someone listening for the first time and this is their first episode, we love to do recaps. So let's see how quick I can make this recap. Definitely, as always, if you want a full, better understanding, please go back and 1, read the Bible for yourself, and 2, listen to our past episodes because we really appreciate when you actually go back and listen. And leave a comment and like and subscribe. Had to get that in there. So as a recap, the people of Israel wanted a king. They really, really wanted a king. But the irony was they already had a king and their king was God. But they wanted an earthly king because they looked around at the other Canaanite nations and they said, hold on, what's different between us and them? Which is already a flaw because what should have been different is you guys worship the one true God and these people don't. But they said, you know what? They have a king who leads their armies. We want that. So they went out, petitioned before Samuel, saying, hey, Samuel, you getting old. You've been doing a good job, right? But yeah, we after you, we don't want your sons. Your sons faulty, so we don't need them as judges and priests. But you know what we do want? We want a king because, the other nations have a king and, we want that. And so Samuel, gathered the people, told them, like, this is a sin because essentially you guys are rejecting God, the God who brought you out of Egypt, the God who delivered this land into your hands, the God who's rescued from your enemies. You guys are abandoning him because he essentially is your king. The people say, okay, you know what? We still want a king. Samuel told them all the consequences of having a king, that your king will, cause some of you guys to get killed, take your wives and your sons and everything like that. No, we want a king. God said, Samuel, they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting me. So you know what? Their hearts and minds are made up. Give them a king. And so Samuel, God showed Samuel the person who would be the first king of Israel. This guy's name was Saul, and he was a head above everyone else. He was a strong man. He was a kingly figure, as if you would imagine. And so, yeah, that's where we're at. Saul already got anointed. He already had a run-in with an enemy of the Israelites. He was able to rescue some Israelites that got encamped and save them from getting their eyes gouged out. And that's kind of where we left off last chapter. That's a brief synopsis. Definitely go back and listen to the past episodes. All right. So even just straight out the gate, even before our time, me and Kazi were going back and forth, be like on this timeline. We're probably going to talk about it in the podcast again. But so in Samuel 13, verse 1, Saul reigned 1 year. And when he had reigned 2 years over Israel, Saul chose for himself 3,000 men of Israel. 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash and in the mountains of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin. The rest of the people he sent away, every man to his tent. And for context here, Jonathan is Saul's son. Because I don't think they said that yet, right?
Nope.
Okay, perfect. And so we see Jonathan attacked the garrison of the Philistines that was in Geba. And the Philistines heard of it. Then Saul blew the trumpet throughout all the land, saying, let the Hebrews hear. Now all of Israel heard it and said that Saul had attacked the garrison of the Philistines, and that Israel had also had become an abomination to the Philistines, and that the people were called together to Saul at Gilgal. Ain't it funny how when the people, when the Israelites were just, calm and meek and submissive, y'all cool with them.
Mm-hmm.
Now they starting to rise up and fight back. Nowadays an abomination to you guys.
That's what I was saying. They're an abomination to you, bro. That's crazy.
Abomination is such a strong word, man.
That's what I'm saying.
Seriously. Because abomination, okay, I just Googled it just to get the online definition. A thing that causes great disgust or loathing, a feeling of hatred.
Sure.
Just like when the Egyptians the shepherds were an abomination to the Egyptians.
Yeah.
Just said Egypts. Wow.
That's crazy, bro.
So then the Philistines gathered together to fight Israel. 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen.
Mm.
You see, when I was reading this, right, I was like, hold on, why are there 30,000 chariots and only 6,000 horsemen? I mean, okay, I guess he's the single horsemen, who just on horseback, and the chariots were the ones who were actually pulled by people in chariots. Okay, so I'll give them a blah. I'll give them a blah. There.
The point that stood out to me though is that now obviously in the world of God and Israelites. This shouldn't matter. But they say Saul chose 3,000 men, right? Verse 2, Saul chose 3,000 men from Israel, right? Why? If your opponent is coming with 30,000, wait.
Yep. 30,000.
30,000.
36,000, really.
Yeah, bro. This is
and
a
the
mismatch.
people on the people on the sand as much as the seashore. So it's like you have 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and then you just raw infantry is innumerable. But still, I see your point. But then we have a story of Gideon.
Yep, that's how they describe the Moabites, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they like the sound of the seashore. It was a lot of camels and stuff, and Gideon had much less than 3,000 men at the end.
Okay. And they came up and encamped at I know I'm pronouncing this wrong, but Michmash.
I don't see how that's wrong, bro. I don't see no other way you can pronounce that.
It just don't sound right.
But I don't see no other way you can pronounce that word, bro.
To the east of Beth Aven. When the men of Israel saw that they were in danger, for the people were distressed, then the people hid in caves, in thickets, in rocks, in holes, and in pits. And some of the Hebrews crossed over the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. As for Saul, he was in Gilgal, and all the people following him trembling. Then he waited 7 days according to the time set by Samuel. But when Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him, so Saul said, "Bring a burnt offering and peace offerings from me." And he offered the burnt offering. So this was like the debate that me and Nakhaz was having before. We should say debate. This was a discussion we was just trying to like wrap our heads around, because here you see they say he waited 7 days according to the time set by Samuel, but Samuel did not come to Gilgal, right? And the context that we've seen used for this was in 1 Samuel 10 verse 8, where it says, where Samuel was like, when we definitely go back and check this episode, but this is when Samuel told Saul all the things that would happen while he was king, right? And he said, "Go down ahead of me to Gilgal. I will surely come down to you to sacrifice burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, but you must wait 7 days until I come to you and tell you what you are to do." And this was before Saul was made king. And so it's the whole thing now we're trying to figure like, when did the timelines, because it's like we at this point, this chapter started off with Saul already being king for over a year. This is the second year of his reign. So we're like, okay, this is interesting. But
yeah, because we see 7 days in Gilgal, Saul and Samuel. So that's and this 1 Samuel 13 verse 8, that's funny. And so 10 verse 8 and 13 verse 8, they talk about Gilgal, Saul, 7 days, and Samuel. I don't know how this could be the same time they talking about, because like this would have been a long week for you as a king. You know what I mean? Like this would have been a active first week, because remember we was just saying how he was plowing his oxen. And we was like, bro, big king like you, and you still plowing oxen, and Nahash coming and gouging out people's eyes, and you don't even know what's happening. I'm like, bro, how quick could all of these things have happened, bro? You're telling me that you went to Gilgal, right? You fight Nahash. You're all sitting around waiting on Samuel. Samuel anoint you again, because remember that happened after they fight Nahash, right? Not anoint you, but he basically reinstate you, or he basically tell everybody the rules and remind them that God isn't pleased with them to have a king. That whole spiel. All in a span of 7 days. I don't know. I don't know that this is the same time. Like, unless I assume they probably saying, well, two things could be happening. First, 10 could be like a fast forward thing, because the Bible sometimes they don't describe things in chronological order. And then this could also be that Samuel had established with Saul that when you go to Gilgal, whenever time you go to Gilgal, I'll be there 7 days after you. Like that might be a tradition or continual thing. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, Saul right now at a place where he was told to wait for Samuel for 7 days, and Samuel would appear to him after 7 days.
So you know what's interesting too, right? So like, I just went like while you was talking, I was listening. I just went back and like just tried to like see what else I could figure out. So I went back to Samuel for Samuel 11, right?
Okay.
And then we see then Samuel said to the people, "Come, let's go to Gilgal and then renew the kingship." And then so I'm like, okay, but didn't y'all already renew the kingship? But then like we see in chapter 12, he had his farewell speech, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm like, did he like then did
come on?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure. I'm like, so did he say this like, you know, speech where they was in Gibeah at that time, and then Saul went to Gilgal, and then, you know, Samuel was coming after this? I don't know. I think I just confused the whole thing, but it's interesting.
There's something we can sit down and we can hash this out if it come to that. Maybe when we get to, do they talk about Saul in Chronicles?
I think they mentioned him briefly, but this is most of his focus here.
Yeah, right. So we probably, when we get to Chronicles, a couple of books from now, we might revisit this.
Yeah. So anyway, so now we see. So what we saw here was that where was I? So we said, "Bring me the burnt offering," and Saul offered the offering. Just as he finished making the offering, Samuel arrived, and Saul went out to greet him. So we see Saul took it upon himself to offer the burnt offering. We see you see all the troops with him were quaking in fear. He waited these 7 days, but Samuel did not come up yet. And then he said, "You know what? Bring me the burnt offering. I'll do it myself." So just keep that in mind. So now we see in verse 11, Samuel appeared and was like, "What have you done?" Saul replied, "When I saw that the men were scattering and that you did not come at the set time, and that the Philistines were assembling in Michmash," I see like they spell it different there, "I thought, now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the Lord's favor. So I felt compelled to offer the burnt offering." In verse 13, Samuel said, "You have done a foolish thing. You have not kept the command of the Lord your God gave you. If you had, you would have established your kingdom over Israel for all time. But now your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart and appointed him ruler of his people, because you have not kept the Lord's command." Then Samuel left Gilgal and went up to Gibeah in Benjamin, and Saul counted the men who were with him. They numbered about 600. So much things right here to unpack, right? So now we see Samuel said, first of all, you did a foolish thing. You did a foolish thing in offering these sacrifices. And to like break it down for people. So Samuel could have offered sacrifices because he was a judge and a priest, but most importantly, he was a priest. He was the high priest of Israel. So he could offer sacrifices to atone for all the sins of all the Israelites, right? Saul was given instructions to, one, wait 7 days for Samuel to come. Wait 7 days for Samuel to come. And then Samuel will offer the sacrifices for the people when he does arrive. So now, on this 7th day, Samuel was taking a bit long to show up. So Saul, seeing these people were around him fearful, as the Bible paints it right now, Saul seeing people around him were fearful, they were quaking in fear. He said, "You know what? It's just the 7th day, Samuel ain't arrived yet." Not saying that this day has been finished yet. Samuel just ain't here yet. My men scattering, they quaking in fear. I need to do something to renew this, like to try to bind the people together. So since Samuel didn't offer sacrifices, I'm going to do it myself. So we see he took it all himself and he offered the sacrifices. He offered to sacrifice the burnt offering. And we see like right as he finished making it, that's when Samuel came. But the problem is, as a king, he doesn't have the authority nor the appointed office to offer these sacrifices for the people. So that's what he did was wrong. Like, one, he didn't trust or waited in God, and then he offered sacrifices that he wasn't supposed to be offering.
So, bro, I struggle with this one for sure. Bro.
Yeah.
It's like, I just feel bad for Saul because of the punishment that was given. Now, obviously, we make mistakes, but then we also do the wrong thing. We also disobey God sometimes. I mean, you could call it a mistake, but it's not an accident. Sometimes you intentionally seek out to disobey God, right? Mm-hmm. And so based on the way Samuel responds, you can tell that Saul intentionally disobeyed God. You can tell that first of all, Samuel had already explained to him all of the duties of the king multiple times, right? Mm-hmm. So to your point off mic, he's fully aware. The point that conflicts me is Saul assuming that he's doing something for God, but he's doing the wrong thing for God. So it reminds me of Cain and Abel, two people who also offered sacrifices. Obviously, it was at different times. Levites did not exist. You understand what I'm saying? That's why, Aaron. Mm-hmm. Cain's sacrifice was obviously wrong. It was obviously wrong. And if he didn't, and if even if he didn't know, God himself said, bro, if you do the right thing, then I will honor it. But if you don't, sin is knocking at your door. But I just feel sorry for Saul because I'm like, bro, you see where he takes matters into his own hands. But according to him, he felt like he was doing it on behalf of God. And I think about myself, right? I think about times when I take matters into my own hands, right? I override what God is asking me to do or what God is telling me to do, but I'm saying, I am doing this thing for God, or this is what God would want me to do, or this is for my best interest. This is saving many lives. This is saving money. This is whatever. I'm just taking this into my own hand. But it made me sad because I see how great a consequence these actions are. And so it helps me to understand the importance of obedience. Even the smallest sin, like Jacob and Esau. Jacob stole the birthright, right? But to me, the birthright was never supposed to be his because, he stole a blessing, but the blessing was technically, in my opinion, supposed to be his because the birthright was sold to you, bro. Like, it's a package deal, bro. You can't have one without the other, but it just don't work like that. However, he used methods of deceit in order to obtain that.
Nefarious means.
Right,
so go for it.
There's one thing he did, but he paid for it. Multiple times. He paid for the rest of his life, bro. Like his life, like based on how the Bible described it, bro, it was just bad situation, but after bad situation.
A series of unfortunate events.
Just a series of that because of one thing that he did. And so you would be like, man, his life just went down the drain after that. Obviously, he still had God, so it's not all bad. But it just go to show how even small sins or even little petty situations that we deem to be petty, the fact that we disobeying God or we doing the wrong thing for the right reason, quote unquote, is still the wrong thing. And we'll explore this concept a little more in Samuel chapter 15. I love 1 Samuel chapter 15. It's just a life lesson to me. But it's important to understand, no matter where you stand with Saul, you might think that he did this accidentally. You might think that he knowingly did the wrong thing. Wherever you stand with Saul, you have to understand that he disobeyed God, period. You understand what I'm saying? Whether it was ignorant or knowingly, he disobeyed God. And there is consequences for your actions. So let's take it outside of the realm of God and Christianity. You could accidentally harm somebody. You could accidentally steal something, do all of these things, but there are still consequences potentially for these actions. You get pulled over for speeding. You tell the police, hey, I didn't even know I was speeding. It's discretionary. However, it is fully within the rules for him to give you a ticket, for him or her to give you a ticket, because at the end of the day, you still transgress the laws of the land or whatever. And you see, it's the same concept here. Saul whether being pure intention, and I'm saying this now because obviously this story even going to unfold a little more, whether pure intention or not, he felt like he was doing the right thing for God. You know what I'm saying? But it had negative consequences.
Serious ramifications for his
serious
actions.
ramifications for his actions.
And for me, like, I mean, I say this off mic too, but for me, for Saul, it was like, as much as we could put ourselves in his shoes, it goes back to something I was saying, like, for the last, like, 2 episodes, I personally would have not wanted to be the first king. Because we see how we see already 2 instances where Samuel borderline bashed these people for choosing a king. And Saul was right there hearing all of this. And the reason why I say, okay, Saul, you should know better. First of all, even if your people quaking and fail, you have the stories of the judges. They should be fresh right now. They should still be super fresh. And even with Samuel, when he became a judge and leader of the people, like how he was able to lead the people to battle by trusting in God. So when he was the first king, you already hear how the last thing we figured out in last episode was when Samuel said, if you people and your king love and serve the Lord and trust in him, things will be good for your kingdom. But if you do not, you guys will fall into ruin. So yeah, you are surrounded by your enemy troops. Yeah, things ain't looking good. The day ain't over yet. You should be trying to like pray to the Lord, trust in him, but you just saying, okay, my people quick and fair. No, one thing I'm gonna do, I gotta offer a sacrifice. Let me try to raise morale by offering a sacrifice. So, and again, like I know we talk about this off mic, and to your point, you say no matter where you stand on this. But I'm like, nothing here really shows that he was doing it for God. It was more so to like, how can I boost my stats and try to raise morale of my people? And so if it was like using God as a tactic of motivation as opposed to doing it in sincerity, in my thing is like the two could be conflated here because I mean we're in a time of war, so people just get desperate. So like, okay, if I can use this means and it might seem good, but I really doing it for my selfish purposes, then you still ain't doing it to honor and glory of God. And
that's a good point.
Yeah. So I'm like, because like again, like I could do good, but I don't have good intentions behind it. I mean, because like but people, and a lot of people is give to charities in the States, but they don't really care about these causes. They just doing it for tax saving purposes.
Tax write-off, yeah.
So you're doing good, but your heart ain't behind it. Yeah. So you're still doing good for personal gain at the end of the day. And I feel like this is what it was here. But then again, I'm like, you have so much instances and so much examples of why you should be trusting in God now. And you was the first king, how much pressure this is on you. Granted, yeah, the people coming to you, right? But you have the whole story. You have all the books of Moses. When the people were crying out to Moses day after day after day after day. And he caved at the end. At the very end, Moses did cave. But what you going through ain't harder than what these other people going through.
That's true. And I wouldn't even say Moses caved, but like his emotions just got the best of him. Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? Like truthfully, like we know Moses know right from wrong, but like at the same time, a lot of people have a breaking point where he was described as the most humble man. But he lacks self-control in that one instance. Mm-hmm. You feel me? And I feel like every human can relate to not having self-control in certain circumstances, you know?
Mm-hmm. But like going back to something we used to do when, again, to your point off mic, we need to go back and start like identifying the test. For right here, because this was Saul's first real test because we see Samuel was delayed. He was delayed. And again, if we go back to our Noah episode, Noah was in the ark for 7 days before the flood came. 7 days before the flood came. Saul had to wait in Gilgal for 7 days before Samuel showed up. And they didn't say when during the 7th day, at what point in time he would show up. He just had to show up before this day was out. And so in my head canon, we see Saul already say, bro, that 7 days come, you might be expecting Samuel to show up first thing in the morning. Because Saul still offered these sacrifices on the 7th day, but we see right after he offered it, that's when Samuel came. He might have been, like, let's say me and Nakhaz make plans to drop the podcast every Friday, which we do, right? But you guys expecting every Friday at 8 o'clock. Suppose 1 week off on the off chance it drops at 9 o'clock. Yeah, it's late, but it still drops on a Friday night. You know what I'm saying? But you expecting it this time because you're already feeling this pressure on you. And you just saying in your head, oh, I can wait. But the day has come, but it's a little bit more delayed than you think. So you say, no, I take this upon myself now. But but I'm like, again, you should have been like you ain't been praying this whole time. Again, like you have the history. You have the history that you could go back and look to. Every time we cry out to God and ask for help, we are delivered. This is throughout all the judges. We ain't able to do nothing. Yeah, like Gideon had an army of 300 who went up against thousands.
Yeah, probably like 100,000 or something like that.
Like, you have a legit army. Like, this is what I'm supposed to mention. Like, you have a legit army now. Like, this ain't no ragtag militia. So you have a legit army who I assume might be some type of level of train, and you got God on your side. But it was you would have had this hands down. What?
Yeah, but bro, man. Anyway, let's progress. I got so much points, but I could say them later.
Yeah, at this point, I think we just could be on chapter 13. Right? We look at the time. I say, yeah, we can see, but because I'm like, we can just get the points out as well. Is what I try to say. Because I'm like, yeah, we could put like to everyone, even with Gideon, we like, yeah, we could put ourselves in Gideon's shoes and see why he was like had the lack of faith. We could put ourselves in Saul's shoes too, because like again, if I just see you at a company, I can want to take matters into my own hands. I get that. But I feel like Saul still has especially certain circumstances here, which he knew right from wrong, but he still was like, okay, you know what? I'm the king now. The final buck stop with me. And that's a good attitude to have in almost all circumstances, but this one. And we see what stuck out to me too. We see like in verse 14, but your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart, which we know who that is, but we're so close to the story, y'all can wait for 2 more episodes to find out who that is.
Right. For those who don't know.
For those of you who don't know, because you have not kept the Lord's command. Think about it. You year 2 into your reign as king. And Saul ruled for like, what, 40 years? You year 2 into your reign and you already know what is over? I can kind of see why he got bitter at the end now.
Yeah.
You year 2 into your reign and you already know, bro, this ain't gonna last.
He never even started, bro. He never even really had a reign that he could enjoy for real, bro.
Like, it's wild. And I mean, I could talk about that a little later, because I'm like, you, instead of, trying to repent, you almost double down in your actions.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my, but okay. So in verse 15, we see then Saul left Gilgal and went up to Gibeah in Benjamin. And Saul counted the men who were with him. They numbered about 600. I think I probably read that. And then so in verse 16, Saul and his son Jonathan, so now we see Jonathan is Saul's son, and the men with them were staying in Gibeah in Benjamin, while the Philistines camped in Michmash. I don't know why I say it like that. Raiding parties went out from the Philistine camp in 3 detachments. One turned toward Ophrah in the vicinity of Shaul, another toward Beth Horon, and the third toward the borderland overlooking the valley of Zeboim, facing the wilderness. Not a blacksmith could be found in the whole land of Israel, because the Philistines had said, otherwise the Hebrews would make swords or spears. And I could give the Philistines this. They smart.
Smart, very smart. They
smart.
These people who's an abomination to us, y'all ain't coming to kill us now. Y'all ain't coming to wage war against us.
No, because think about it, right? This is before they even consider them abomination, right? This is the time when we conquered y'all. But you know what we could do? We could take out the methods in which it would take for you guys to even come back and overthrow us through physical means. Because now if I take away your ability to create weapons, now you can't produce weapons, which would severely lower your chances or the likelihood of y'all coming to wage war against me to regain power. And that's why I think that was just so smart. Like, that's just, it's like talks like this we see today. Like, but when a nation invades a nation, you try to take out their structural and their infrastructural needs that could, cripple them. So if I come there and I take away your ability to make weapons, guess what? This is less weapons you can make against me in time of war. And so I just think that was smart. Like, granted, the Philistines on the opposition side, so I ain't really trying to praise them. I just said that was a decent tactic that they employed against the Israelites. So all of Israel went down to the Philistines to have their plow points, mattocks, axe, and sickles sharpened. And see, and it's even better. So now you guys have to come to me. So I actually could keep track of, one, making sure you're actually producing the weapons, but I actually could keep track of, all the sharp objects that you guys actually have, like I always keep a small tally. Okay, they got about this much axes, this much sickles, and mostly you see all these things here. They're really used for farming. They ain't really used for war.
That's what I'm gonna say, bro. These things, a mattox is like what they call it? Is that like a hoe?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's like a hoe. Then you got a sickle. That's what they used to cut the reap, the harvest, and yeah, forks for hay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then so the price was 2/3 of a shekel for sharpening plow points and buttocks, and 1/3 of a shekel for sharpening forks and axes for repointing gourds. Yeah. So on the day of the battle, not a soldier with Saul and Jonathan had a sword or a spear in his hand. Only Saul and his son Jonathan had them.
That's crazy. We can leave this for next week.
Yeah.
Verse 23.
It just fits with the next episode. But so what are your thoughts overall? Like, because we got some time.
Yeah. So all right. So the first point is going back to knowing what you believe, why you believe it, where it's from. Saul had to have known. As you're the king, bro. Samuel, we see Samuel explain things to you multiple times, right? But it's important to believe these things and not just let them go in your ear and out the other. Because if you truly respect God and you truly know that He is God and you understand the history and you trust these things are truthful, like you sincerely trust that, you will not be in a position where you have to take matters into your own hand. And that's what we see Saul doing. Saul did not believe. Saul did not believe in God. And then at the same time, right, let's say he did believe in God, right? Saul is what I like to call he's suffering from main character syndrome. Saul has drank from the cup of all the other Israelites in that the king is their savior. Now, this is kind of poetic to me because this is the beginning of a long line of kings that can't save nothing. You understand what I'm saying? And so that's why it's so funny. The one king that they had that actually could have like saved them in battle and was actually a good warrior, they revere him till the end. They talk with him even probably till this day, right? Mm-hmm. However, we have a king savior that is undefeated in battle, you know. And I ain't even trying to do the benediction so early, but bro,
okay, good.
I ain't trying to do the benediction. I ain't trying to end it, but that's why I'm saying that's why like the Bible is such an interesting book and such an important book, bro. They put all of their faith in the king, bro, but the king is not their savior, you know. And so the first chance, the first test that the king actually had, they running wild. Why? Explain to me why the Israelites was disheartened, but while they have their king who they asked for, they literally hired this man for this very moment, for when we going out to war against the other nations. Our king will lead us, our king, y'all rejoice, this is what y'all wanted. And now y'all get what y'all wanted, and now y'all running around and y'all scared, and y'all king panicking.
The grass ain't green on the other side.
But it's not. It's a scam, bro. Y'all scam yourself. You feel me? Y'all really think, oh, I can get this king and then everything will be solid, bro. Bro, what is gonna change when you have a leader, bro? Y'all had leaders, bro. The king is just a rich leader, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and y'all always had leaders. Y'all always had Saul and Samuel, you know what I'm saying? Y'all always had God. And that's the difference. We see Saul drink from the cup of the Israelites, thinking that I am supposed to be the guy to make everything right. Everything is in disarray. It's like imagine planning an event. When you're doing event planning, a lot of things could and will go wrong. I just had a wedding. I didn't do too much planning. My wife do most of the planning. Praise God. I was sitting there watching stuff fall through. I was watching things not go as planned. You understand what I'm saying? And that's when your faith in God really can get tested, bro. Because it's like what you can do. You see what I'm saying? Like for real, bro. Like when you planning events, when you have such life things happening. Saul, though, he did not subscribe to that. Saul subscribed to, all right, this is me. Saul acting like this was like Greek mythology or something, and this is before that happened, where he's like, bro, I'm the king, or whatever. I gotta do this. Saul wanted to. He shoot a long range Hail Mary shot, and he wanted it to go in, and it had a high risk, obviously high reward, because if God had blessed this and they had become victorious, then he would be written down in the books as, or Saul, when everything go bad, I do this and I blah 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 blah. In the next chapter, we can see more about Saul's mindset, Saul mindset. But ultimately, the point I'm making is Saul did not know. Like how they say, if you know better, you'll do better. There's a bit nuance to that because people know better all the time and they don't do better, right? But let me tell you this, bro. If Saul understood the severity of his crime, he wouldn't have do it, bro. If Saul know that doing this one thing was going to cost me my seat on the throne and my children's seat on the throne, he wouldn't have do it, bro. And that's the thing. He wasn't learned enough about the things of the Bible, bro. He didn't understand the severity of being the leader. You understand what I'm saying? And he didn't take the time to sought God to be his leader while he lead Israel.
It gets me when I think it was in chapter 10 when Saul was, overcome with the Holy Spirit. He started to prophesy, and people was like, "Is Saul a prophet now?" Like it's kind of shocking to them.
Yeah.
And in that episode, we started to wonder was Saul really just not of God? Why was it so shocking? And to your point, I can't say he wasn't a believer or anything like that. So he clearly knew of God, but was he deep in the Word? And it's evident that he wasn't, because in times of trouble is when we as humans go to what we know best. We got to know what we know best. So if you are a panicker, when things get rough, you panicking, you just going to say, okay, cool. And if you was a person of action, when things get rough, you could take the pressure, but you still go into this is what I do. I doing it. I go into that. If you was a man of God, you should be turning to God at that point in time. And something, I don't know why, but I'm just okay, bro, Samuel just was saying how bad, how sinful it is that Israel asks for a king. And you was the first king. I personally would have tried to be on my P's and Q's. And I know it's easy for me to say that because I ain't in Saul's shoes. I fully admit that. I ain't in Saul's shoes. But again, you just heard Samuel say these things. You ain't even gotta read no scroll to figure this out. You just literally heard Samuel say, bro, it's a simple thing that you guys do and ask for a king. But guess what? God ain't gonna leave his people because that ain't God's character. He can still be there for y'all. But you gotta trust in him. You gotta follow him. You gotta listen to his commandments. And then, so Ali, go for it.
No, my bad. I got you done. My bad.
No, because I was going to say, I was just going to go back and okay, let me get a familiar understanding of how we got here. Because again, all the Israelites know the story. Yeah, we came from Egypt. We conquered this land. Because remember who it was? Was it Jephthah who gave that very eloquent soliloquy
to
the
Jephthah.
King? And the synopsis of how we got here, and proving this is exactly how this land is ours. You can't claim this land. And if you guys conquered it, would you guys give it back? Come on now. So again, all the Israelites knew the history, but to me, if I'm leading these people, I need to understand what it is to actually lead these people. I need to get a full understanding of our history, the word of God. If God chose me, why he chose me. And that might just be me and my temperament and my mindset and my personality type and how I approach things. But I'm you as the king now, you just see no play thing no more. And you already see how simple it was for them to ask you for this. So why, of a sudden, if God appointed you, means if God called you to it, you could do it, right? But in a first time, your first test, again, you already trusted in God before, and when you went to go rescue the people from Nahash, and so now you crumbling because the stakes just get higher. There's more people, there's a bunch of people surrounding your camp now. But again, if you look at all the things what the Israelites have been through up to this point, and all the people God has helped deliver. Again, I just like Gideon because it was literally Gideon had amassed an army over more than 3,000 men, and God dwindled it down to just 300 men. Come on, man! What you doing? You're supposed to be in your P's and Q's. And to me, I guess I low-key disappointed in Saul because I'm you started off so good. you started off so good, and now you just starting to be like, you lost faith this quick. And I know that's our human nature. So again, I feel like how you looking at yourself and Saul, looking at myself and Saul, and just from a different angle, like, bro, this all it took for you to lose your faith. This all it took for you to lose your kingdom. Like, seriously, like, things got hard and you just was like, you started to crumble and take matters into your own hands. And I'm like, again, like, just turn to God. Like, you have, go for it.
I'm so torn with that, bro, because like Saul could rationalize that this was his way of turning to God, right? And that's another reason why we honing in the significance of knowing what's in the book, bro. Because you can't disobey God and say that this was for God.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I say? But if God say, the priest should do this, you who are not a priest, you shouldn't rationalize in your mind, I am doing this for God. Because at the end of the day, he was burning a sacrifice. This is a practice that they do unto God. Not they do it to God, but it's for him to forgive them of their sins.
Mm-hmm.
And we know how important that is. We see how Aaron's sons died because they offered a sacrifice. They was drunk, allegedly, maybe more than likely drunk. And they offer strange fire and they end up burning up yourself. This is a serious situation, bro. Mm-hmm. These people, bro, you're about to go to war. These people might not live or die. Why you ain't trying to be serious and atone for their sins? But Saul can say, I was being serious, bro. I am the leader, so I wanted to make sure everybody's sins was atoned for. But guess what? God didn't say that. God did not tell you to do that. If I was there and I was in from Levi, from the tribe of Levi, God ain't telling me to do that. God ain't telling none of y'all to do that. You understand what I'm saying? And so that's why it really teared me apart, because if Saul knew better, he either knowingly disobeyed, which would explain why Samuel Samuel said what, basically prophesied that his kingdom wouldn't last, or he didn't know better and he tried to rationalize this thing. But like I mentioned earlier, either way you put it, that's still wrong, because God didn't say that. That's why it is important to know what's in the book, bro. It's important to know the law. You understand what I'm saying? So we can assume that he knew the law. He probably knew the law. I believe he knew the law, right? But in the off chance that he didn't know the law, bro, it's still wrong, bro. You can't be saying he was the king of Israel. You can't be saying he was the leader of Israel, and you don't know the history of Israel. What type of thing that is, bro? Imagine, bro, I can be real with you. I can be honest with you. There's plenty countries in the world I don't know nothing about. You can't put me in to be the king of this country. You understand what I'm saying? And I don't know nothing. I don't know nothing but the history. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I am underqualified in that situation. And I don't think that's what Saul was.
See, one thing that's telling to me, right? And to your point, valid. And my thing is like, okay, even if you didn't know, it was your job to know the law. Even if you didn't know. But then one thing that also sticks out to me, we see Samuel say, guess what? The Lord is choosing someone who is a man after his own heart, which kind of implies, bro, that Saul wasn't really seeking out after God. Mm-hmm. For that line just be so blatant, like, yeah, God's choosing now someone who's after his own heart, because that ain't you. That ain't you, because to me, that's such a strong rebuke. Like, because you have not kept what the Lord had commanded you to do. Like, again, I agree. Saul, like I say, Saul wasn't unjustified in doing what he was doing, but the mere fact that he still did what was wrong makes it wrong. And even if you didn't know it was wrong, it was your job to know that it was wrong, because you are the leader of these people. So you're the king. You are upholding the law in a different way. How you don't even know what the law is to uphold? Like,
if you don't know the law,
yeah, like it's literally your job to know these things, or guess what? If it's spiritual matters, if you feel like you're unqualified, you're really supposed to consult Samuel. And again, you are the king. If there ain't no cell phones or nothing in that point, right? You have the authority to send messengers to find Samuel and bring him to you.
Yep. And then, like you say, it was utter.
Exactly. Like if we had got like, again, next week we're going to see that there were other priests, because even though Samuel was the high priest, there were other priests that were still around. So if Samuel was taking long, you could have got another priest to offer the sacrifice, because the priests still have the right to offer sacrifice. The Levi tribe are the ones who do all the ceremonial functions. You from the tribe of Benjamin. So you can't even fake your way into saying I have some type of weird authority to do this. Every Israelite know that's wrong. From a point blank period, every Israelite know that's wrong. Even use the king or not. You know you ain't from the tribe of Levi. You know you ain't supposed to be offering no sacrifice. Like, I mean, I just thinking about it, I'm like, every Israelite camp know is, because guess what? Like, as we was making light of when we was doing those episodes, the Levites, they can't fight. They ain't got no real towns for themselves. They living off of y'all. So even if you don't know, you know. Because you have no reason not to know.
That's your whole life. That's your career, bro. Like, that's everything in one.
Exactly. So like, you know your tribe ain't the sacrificial tribe. So like, you ain't supposed to be doing this. And so it's still kind of even weird for me. Like, again, we were saying if he didn't know, but I can't even give him that excuse no more thinking about it. Because there was no reason for you not to know you ain't supposed to be doing this.
Yeah.
Like, again, he could have found an ex-priest. Really and truly, it looks like if he had waited one more hour and just had faith.
Well, again, I don't know how long the sacrifices to take, but if you just wait, dog.
Because again, it shows like, and to me, this part was really a test. Because the odds are stacked against you. Things are looking bad. But where's your faith at the end of the day? Where's your trust in God at the end of the day? Mm-hmm. Because if you did have the faith and you did have the trust in God, then again, my thing is you should have been praying and just focusing on God at this point, trying to lead the people of God and just encouraging them, guys, God has our back. We have been through this before. And like, I ain't even trying to sound holier than thou. Because yes, it's a scary situation. I ain't making light of that. Yes, the enemy is against you. I ain't making light of that. But again, at the times when you feel like the odds are stacked the most against you is when the times you should be turning to God the most. Mm-hmm. And use the king. Who knows? I guess I don't feel like I bashing on Saul. Twigman might say I'm going too hard on Saul.
Shout out Twigman.
Shout out Twigman.
One thing I wanted to say though.
Yeah, go for it.
Is, bro, God's time is not our time, though. But in every single thing, like the urgency. That's why the Bible do say in the New Testament, I think it's maybe Philippians, be anxious for nothing, but by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, make your request known unto God, right? But you know what it is? Someone tell you don't be anxious. There's so much things in the world that can make me anxious. Bro, if someone have a gun in my face, you don't think I could be anxious? If I'm about to miss my flight, you don't think I could be anxious? Bro, it's just certain things that really is invoke anxiety within you, right? And I ain't talking about like a mental disorder. I'm talking about things that you can't control. You know, that type of anxiety. But but there are certain things that happen that make you anxious, but the Bible is saying don't be anxious, just make your request known unto God, right? But God's time is not our time, bro. Like you literally could be saying, bro, well, if I don't get to the gate by 5:10 or whatever, the plane, I can miss my flight. So you anxious about that, but you never know, bro. You pray to God. It might be God's will for you to miss your flight. You might teach you a lesson, or it might actually, you might be saving you from something, or you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, the flight might be delayed. There XYZ, so much things that can happen, right? That's why I feel like it's very beneficial for us not to be anxious, because when you be anxious, you could be impulsive. And we see that Saul's sin right here, bro. He was impulsive, bro. The fact that as soon as you finish the sacrifice, the prophet come, that means you could have waited, but you should have waited just a little bit more and you would have passed the test. Think about how serious, right? Think about this test was serious because, you know, the enemy coming towards y'all, they about to kill you all, but your life and death is at stake, right? However, your test was literally just to wait. You don't have to do nothing else, bro. But God wasn't even telling you do something or go fight against it. No, just wait. That was Saul's test. But the question, what I wanted to mention earlier, though, and this is a question for the audience, and this is something that you can put in the question for the week.
Oh, I will. I want the time.
Yeah. What do you do when your promise is delayed? When the thing that God promised you, the thing that you feel like you deserve, the thing that you have been assured will happen is delayed. what do you do? I think about Abraham. His promise was delayed.
And I was thinking about him too.
His promise is delayed. And so we see Saul as well. It wasn't as severe as Abraham's promise, which was delayed for decades. But his promise was delayed for a few hours. And we see how that ended. And that's a big test. And it's obvious that this was a big test for Saul. But the question for everybody is, what do you do when your promise is delayed?
The Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away. An experience Saul knows firsthand. In the midst of a crisis, the king of Israel chose to put matters into his own hands. And through disobedience, he took those matters out of God's hands. And this was the decision that costed him the kingdom. But God's not completely done with Saul. The question is, will Saul continue to disobey, or will he choose obedience? We'll find out next week on the next episode of A Breath of Fresh Air. Tonight's episode included voice acting by your hosts, Earl Roberts and Nakhaz. Remember to go ahead and research on your own in order to get a more firm understanding of tonight's episode. And if you enjoyed it, make sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. You can follow us on social media at A Breath of Fresh Air Pod on Instagram and BOFAPOD on Twitter. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week.